are we today?
What is going on, Mr. Mason?
Nothing much. Just like to welcome everybody back on to another live episode of the MonsterCast podcast with me, Mason, and of course with Kim Miguez. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's the Sunday night dinner table, and normally we have families on. Last week we didn't. We had Tony Oaks to celebrate Memorial Day, and this week with our guest, I decided that he was just too important to share the room with, with anybody else. So, real quick, Mason, how's quarantine?
It's going great. Just chilling in my room for the past, day. It's been good. Just riding it out till the end at this point, but, I'm out here making sure I'm staying safe and, just waiting around at this point.
All right. Well, I think without further ado, I think we bring in our guest, the Hall of Famer, owner of PEI, Patrick Enterprises Incorporated, and the creator and driver of Samson, Mr. Dan Patrick.
Both drivers working into the lights.
Good close run. I think it was Samson. Dan Patrick, yes, 5:28, but a good close run. Good race. Oh, Dan Patrick first a wheelie, then he almost tips it over when it gets on his nose. An exciting ride for Dan Patrick and Samson, 3.91 ET.
Just kind of aired out his commonplace, but Dan Patrick and Samson.
Dan Patrick and his truck Samson didn't keep fans in suspense for long when he won the Monster Truck Racing Association's Wreck of the Year award.
Dan Patrick sitting inside of Samson, ready to go. Oh boy.
All right.
Dan Patrick, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys tonight?
Good. What that wreck of the year there in that clip? You remember that?
Oh yeah. I just paid $10 to get my fire suit dry clean and it got dirty, and I was more upset about that than I was the $30,000 worth of damage I did to the truck.
Well, first let's talk about what has quarantine been like for Patrick's family up there in Circleville.
Well, it really hasn't changed any for us here because the shop's where we live. And in our area, we've been fairly mobile. We just really haven't gone anywhere. But we've been building stuff. We got, when things shut down, we were still probably 3 months out on work. So we got that stuff done. We just finished up a new crustration chassis for Greg Witchenbach. And then got got all the Feld stuff all caught up and got their shelves all restocked and got our shelves pretty much restocked. And then we're building 2 trucks for us right now.
Well, so let's go back to the beginning. I mean, you've been in this business for quite a while. I mean, how hard was it when you built your first monster covered wagon? How hard was it to get the horse to pull them?
Well, I got in this a little different than most people. I actually bought my first truck from Don Maples, who was the originator of Samson. He built a second truck, which was a duplicate of Bigfoot 7 at the time. And they were kind of gearing up towards racing, and he just didn't really have a racing background. He called me one night to buy a transporter from me, and I ended up buying his truck from him. So that's how I got into it, and that was like October of 88, I think it was.
And it's just been a regret ever since, hasn't it?
Well, people ask me how I got started. I always kind of jokingly say, well, I lost a bet at a bar. But it was just one of those things. It was a transition. Dale Wilson kind of transitioned from pulling. That's where my roots go into back into the 70s. So I did multiple engine tractors, and I did the funny car puller things and the dragster puller things. And for originally the U.S. Hot Rod, and a lot of people don't know, the young generation don't know, I was one of the early guys with the founders of the U.S. Hot Rod Association in 1983, when that was all owned by three gentlemen out of Chicago. And then so anyway, the pulling was kind of going away as far as indoors, and the Mosh trucks was kind of coming in, and they were racing them, and I was more had more energy about racing than I did about just crushing cars with them. So that's really kind of where I rolled into it, and it was just been it's just a roller coaster since then. It's just too many things really to say. All the different things I've been involved in over the last 30 plus years.
Well, so now, okay, so you go into and you buy a monster truck and you move forward. How do you make that work into PEI and now being one of the leading builders and innovators, in the monster truck industry? How did you start with that? Moving parts, chassis.
Well, I built pullers and stuff like that because I used to have a large farming operation. And then, once I got in, the monster truck thing, Bob Chandler has a lot more to do with me building trucks than anything. He came to me in the spring of '89 at Silverdome, and I was up there running at Samson at the Silverdome for U.S. Hot Rod. And he asked me about building his race truck, and he wanted somebody kind of outside the industry. And then I didn't really know much about what he wanted to do, so it was a learning curve for both of us. So I moved to St. Louis in April of '89, and then with him and Jim Kramer and myself, and I moved my whole shop there. And they added me to a room. It was all by myself, so I didn't really interact with anybody in probably the first year I was there. I was kind of in the R&D and building. So that's kind of where that came to. And then he was not a builder, but he can convey his ideas to me through his drawings. And then a lot of the times the drawings couldn't be built the way he drew it, so I would build it to kind of use my abilities, and I'd come up with this or that, and then we'd settle on that. Then we would redraw it and just kind of go from there. And so it was a nice collaboration between Bob and I and Jim, and we started on that in April. Then we debuted it at the Indianapolis Jamboree in September.
Well, so now after you get out of that and you built to that when you decide to move on and just kind of start doing your own thing? Or
I stayed there 3 years, and then I saw a need. I saw an opportunity to build. I had a lot of people ask me if I would build stuff on the side, and I didn't feel I could do that and work for Bob at the same time. And they were getting more trucks and more trucks. I was getting really, really thin there, more responsibilities. My family was not doing well. My children weren't doing well in school and stuff. When you go from a little community that I'm from to a city of St. Louis, it's a whole different culture shock. And so, they came back. I kind of did back and forth a little bit, but when I came back, I already had my shop here. So I started building and stuff, and I was campaigning my own truck, too. And we were heavily involved with United Sports of America and Coors Brewery, with one of my funny cars in the monster truck. So then we got, the Gladiator thing come a little bit later, but so to supplement traveling, when I wasn't traveling, I built stuff for other people. So that's kind of where PEI started. And then thinking that when my career is over, I figured my career is only going to last 5 or 6 years. When my career is over, then I would just build. And, my career ended up lasting until 2012, maybe. both kept growing and actually still growing. We don't do as much with the truck as we used to because of constraints, but we just started on our 130th chassis, which is for us a couple weeks ago. And then, I hate to think how many. We probably produce 150 rear end housings a year, plus shocks and components. So, we ship stuff worldwide. We've been very blessed. The industry has been very, very good to us.
And I put a lot of those housings in.
Yeah. Well, you work for an overachiever. And so Jimmy has bought a lot of stuff from me and others you've worked with and stuff. So, the thing is, we always try to make things better, but they keep making the wall bigger and the trees are bigger in diameter and they want to hit them faster. And, I used to say that we would build dresses for prom queens to go to the prom, and then they would take them to a rooster fight and get the crap beat out of them. And so it was really hard when I was building turnkey trucks for Feld Entertainment to let them go when they went out the door, as they weren't my children anymore, because we always took so much pride in building, what we consider the best trucks out there. And when they go out and just abuse the hell out of them, it took a little while for me to get over it. And now I welcome it. When I go to Vegas, I always tell these guys that, you can step it up. We can make more parts.
So, I mean, you've got to see this every few years, every 10 years, whatever, the evolution to where kind of the technology catches up and at the peak of what it does compared to what the shows are changing. Do you think we're about there to where we've hit the max of what these trucks can do, where something's going to have to change? Or do you think we'll have room to grow and take the beating
Well, the thing is, I was to the point where I was going to quit driving around the late 90s, early 2000s, because I just couldn't take the punishment. And then that's when the help of Brian Butler at Butler Seats in Charlotte, we developed the seat, which is now commonplace. And that allowed me to drive another, 15 years. So the technology, it's not happening as fast as what it used to. Some people say, well, your chassis don't look so much different than what you did 15 years ago, but they're completely different. There's a lot of different technology that's going into the tubing is different. There's things you don't see. There's a lot of reinforcement. It used to take, I did 2 chassis for Bigfoot in 1995. I flew home from California and I was only home for 10 days. I built 2 chassis. Me and another guy built 2 chassis for them. And I forget what they were, 15 and 16 or 14 or 15. And, knocked them out. Now, they were just bare bones chassis. Now it takes 2 guys here 4 weeks. So it's 320 man hours to build a new PEI chassis. So that's how much they have involved. And that's doing, a lot, with our lasers and everything else, that's mass producing things. So, there's so much more into it. What's the future? I see we need to get back to lightening the trucks up again. But the problem with lightening things up is like back when I used to do competitive tractor pulling. When you want to go lighter, it really gets expensive because you're talking different alloys, you're talking different technology. I mean, we have a 9,000 pound truck that I think would withstand what's going on now. But the problem with that is that's a $500,000 truck. And the market will not support a $500,000 truck now.
Yeah, I know a couple people who can afford that.
Well, it's whether they can afford it or not. I mean, you have a different array. We have a different array of customers now. We have the guys that do it for a living. We have the guys that do it as a hobby. And the guys that do it for a hobby that have very successful businesses, they'll spend more money. But again, for me to develop this and spend so much doing new products, there has to be a demand for it and there has to be a market for it. And that makes it difficult. And then even though things are slow now, we've been developing a lot of new stuff, but where are we going to be in 6 months? Where are we going to be in a year? You can only kind of stick your neck out so far.
Well, if PEI wants to sponsor the MonsterCast podcast with a truck you want me to try out, Dan, I'm more than willing to take one out and run it through the ringers and see what happens. Just test these capabilities.
Well, I'll take that under advisement, Cameron. I love you like a brother, but I don't even know if I do that for my own brother.
Just talk to the wife, talk to Rick and Allie, see what they all think. We'll run crunch some numbers and see if we can make it happen.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody says, do you have an easy payment plan? I said, absolutely. One big easy payment.
One big easy payment. All right. Do you take checks?
It depends.
All right.
As long as it's wrapped around a big wad of cash.
Oh, the big wad of cash. It just ain't going to be real. Well, something else we do on here that we like to do with our guests that we've started the last couple of weeks is our friends Christopher and Jim Allen and Carol Allen do the West Coast coverage of Monster Trucks with Monster Trucking with Jim and Chris. They like to come in with Christopher's fun fact of the week about our guest. So, Mason, let's see what Christopher has for us this week about the impact.
Hello, Monster Truck fans. I'm Christopher Allen, a.k.a. the Monster Truck Guru, with your Dan Patrick edition of Monster Truck Fact of the Week. Dan started racing in 1988 when he bought Samson 1, which was quickly converted into the purpose-built race truck Samson 2 not long after. In the 32 years since then, Dan's monster truck chassis, built under the company name Patrick Enterprises Inc. or PEI, have become synonymous with popularity, as the number of PEI chassis running the monster truck circuit today is well into the triple digits. However, one lesser known fact about Dan's career is that in the early 1990s, he got a sponsorship from the American Gladiators TV show. And throughout the duration of that sponsorship, competitors from the show would serve as cheerleader figures while Dan and Samson were racing. This is just one of a slew of reasons why Dan was in the third class inducted into the International Monster Truck Hall of Fame, which you can visit in Auburn, Indiana, inducted in the year 2013. And that's your Monster Truck Fact of the Week, folks. Please check out Monster Trucking with Jim and Chris on Facebook and Instagram for 4 years worth of excellent Monster Truck Show coverage from all across the West Coast. Thanks for tuning in. Please come back next week. And remember, Monster Trucks forever!
Well, there you go. He knows more about you than you probably remember, doesn't he?
Well, you would be surprised, and I'm surprised and amazed of people I meet, like Christopher, that remind me of things I did that I don't even remember I did. I have a customer in Wales, New South Wales, that was reminding me, we were driving through the countryside of England, and he reminded me all these things that I didn't even remember that I did. And so it's just because I've been around a long time doesn't mean I know a lot of it and I forgot a lot that I've done. But it's really nice to have, fans out there so dedicated to our industry that do the research and remember these things, and it humbles you. It makes you feel good about what you do.
Well, and he brought up the Hall of Fame, which to me is one of the coolest things. I was so glad when it got started. Especially to see some of the guys that I see got in early, guys like yourself. For you, seeing that started, wasn't around when you got started about 2010, I guess. What was that like, getting inducted and being part of the third class into that?
Well, at the time, I'm not going to say I didn't think it was a big deal, because it is a big deal. I didn't think I was worthy that early. I thought there was more that were maybe more well-deserving. I thought I would get in later on. But, when you stand up there and you're speaking, And I told this to others that came after me, Gene Patterson and Jerry Richmond. I said, when you get up there, your emotion's going to come over you because it's going to hit you what it really is and what it means. And so I am very honored to be part of that. I think it's a great thing that Jeff Cook and others are doing. The thing is, anything is kind of like my museum, my shop and stuff. And there's days in everybody's lives when you're just stressed out and you're thinking, what the hell am I doing? Where's this going? Should I keep doing this? No, whatever. When you get a look at the history of what you've done or what others have done, it kind of boosts your ego a little bit and it makes you, feel good about what you do. And so, I have friends in NASCAR and NHRA and stuff like that. And we all share the same thing. We always think that maybe this other form of motorsports doesn't really care for what you do and you don't care for what they do or whatever. But when I go to the PRI show, and meet, my friends or others in other forms of motorsports, they want to talk about what I'm doing and I want to talk about what they're doing. So, that all comes back and then the Hall of Fame kind of unifies that.
Well, I know, and anybody that doesn't know about it, your little museum there in the shop, I know I walked around it a couple times and just awe. And for somebody like me who's kind of a geek and knows the history of this business and followed it since I was a little kid, I mean, it's cool to see not only the history of it, but now with the Hall of Fame, you guys get recognized for that history and what you've done and what you've brought to the industry that's still without a lot of you guys, it is. So, it's cool to see, and I could have been happier when you got in. But something else we like to do on here is we like to interact with everybody and have other people ask questions so they don't sit here and listen to me talk all night. So, Mason, what do you got there, bud?
We got quite a few people tuning in saying, hello, Dan, long-time fan. Quite a few of those. An interesting one that I saw from William Carroll Arnold says, hey, Dan, big fan. I have a two-part question. How did you come up with the iconic Samson arms, and what has been your favorite Samson paint scheme over the years?
Well, the arms came up through the American Gladiator program. When I was doing the Coors Brewing program with United Sports, when they were sponsored by Coors and Chevrolet, that sponsorship was coming to an end, and they were thinking about, what can we do? And so one of the owners, who also is a concert promoter, somehow got involved with MGM Television, which is Samuel Goldwyn Jr. And they owned the TV show American Gladiator. So they decided to do a theme truck. Excuse me. So they contacted me to do a concept truck because we were doing, when I was at Bigfoot, we were doing the snake bite thing. And so we were kind of new to the 3D thing with George Link at GTS Fiberglass. And George and I have been friends for a long time before that. And then, so we come up with the concept of the arms. And so originally it wasn't Samson, it was just American Gladiators because they didn't want any name on there. I put Samson on the truck when I started doing the Penda series because if I was funding it, I put my name on it. And so anyway, because that was an expensive series to race in. And then, so that's where the arms came with the American Gladiators. So that's where that came from. And, the name Samson, well, that was bought when I bought the truck from Don Maples, the originator of Samson. And so I think that's what the question was. If I got that right, there was another part.
He was asking what your favorite paint scheme of the Samson was.
My favorite paint scheme would probably be the first really tricked out high dollar paint job. Would have been around 97, 98. I had gotten a deal with Alan Bradley Electronics or controllers we developed through one of their engineers when we were doing the Penda racing, I had a 4-speed transmission, 4-speed Lenco, and I couldn't shift it fast enough to get into high gear manually. So we put a controller in there. Well, they did a contest about the most unique thing one of their products was used for, and this guy won it because of this deal with the monster truck. So they asked me to be at one of their trade shows, which is at Opryland amusement park, or at the convention center. And actually, I was supposed to go to Aruba and Curacao to race for a month, and they bought out my contract, and they wanted me to display the truck there. And they paid me such a hefty thing for that. We completely took the truck apart, powder coated it, and redid it all, put a new body on it. Had Neil Wilson's painter that did his paint jobs, Chuck Butler. So he painted, the truck. And so we never had time to do that. So that was our first one. And that's probably my favorite of all of them, because he did it in such a way that when you took pictures of it, the chains looked 3D. That looked like the chains were laying on top of the truck, not part of it. And so he did 4 more for me. So, but that's my favorite one.
And you say you're not a big deal. What else you got?
Got another one from Levi Shones, another interesting one. What was your inspiration for the cantilever suspension on Samson during your career?
Well, that goes back to when I worked with Bob at Bigfoot. We did cantilevers on 8, and 9, and 10, and 11. We kind of got away from them in the front of the truck, and when I liked the cantilever deal in the back, because at the time we just had 20-inch shocks, and so we had developed the cantilever thing, or Bob did. We could get upwards of 36 inches of travel with a cantilever, and so when I built my first race truck, I had asked Bob, because he had a patent on it, if he would allow me to use it, and he did. And I ran that. That worked so well in racing. It sucked big time in freestyle, but in racing, we just, you could just launch over stuff. And if I would do off-road courses, you could just flatten the throttle out, and you could just scoot across those like the guys on the motocross bikes did. And you just never lost. It was just a fun truck to drive. And, we had to drop out so fast that when the thing shot in the air and dropped out, it actually it snapped back in so hard it lifted the front end up. So my truck always really flew nice. That's my favorite truck of all the trucks that I've had. And so when we replaced that one in 2000, 4 or 5, we thought we would improve it, and it worked worse. And so actually my probably most competitive truck is down in Atlanta, sitting outside of a amusement park, rusting to the ground.
Oh, I know where I'm going.
And keeping it back with the questions, we have one from Joshua Yohu, and he's saying, to keep with tradition, but I'll ask my normal question. What is your favorite chassis you've built, and what is it currently under?
Well, I guess I just kind of answered that. It was actually chassis 13, which was my first, race truck. But I spent almost a year building that. I didn't have computers, and I don't use to this day. I mean, we have computers and we do a lot with them. But it kind of comes back to like what I did with Bob. I build this stuff, then we take a computer and duplicate it. We reverse engineer it. So a lot of my stuff is in my head. I just kind of old school it. So I don't do really good conveying things. So I just build them. But I spent so much time developing that truck. It was kind of a joke. Is we told them, don't sweep the floor, because that's my Etch-a-Sketch. I draw out on the floor, and strings and screwdrivers and this, that, and the other. A lot of trial and error. And then if somebody comes in and sweeps the floor, that might be 5 days of good work they just swept up. But But anyway, back to that truck, I guess because I spent so long building it, and it just came out of the box working so well.
And I've been in your shop. You do not allow messes on your floor. I've seen it. Don't even pretend like you do.
You didn't go to the old shop.
All right. Looking at a few more, we actually have one from Kristen Hope Miguez, and she's asking on thoughts on chrome alloy, specifically for chassis. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but I think it's chrome alloy. Yeah.
Do I use that, or would I use that? Is that the question?
She's asking what's your thoughts on using chromoly for chassis.
I built Bigfoot 9 with chromoly, and I built another chassis with chromoly. But when we built Bigfoot 9, we were all after going lighter, so we built it a little bit thinner tubing. It worked really good for about a year and a half. Then it started breaking up. Chromoly is not doesn't have a long lifespan. It's stronger, of course, and being stronger, you can go lighter, but when you're going lighter, you want flex, and the problem is the memory and the material goes away. So after about a year and a half with Bigfoot 9, it was just breaking up all the time. It was coming back from show after show after show, just literally cracked up here and there. It wasn't because of the craftsmanship or the welding and stuff. It's just material just fatigued, and that's why in drag racing, those guys use new chassis every year because they call them wind shook. The flex and stuff, they just don't hold up. And because we're demanding so much out of these trucks, as far as impact and I want to put the ratios as far as impact, G-forces, I guess is what I wanted to say. The chromoly just won't hold up over time, and that's why I've stayed away from it now.
Well, just the twisting force we put on these trucks now, the jump, and the way nothing lands flat anymore, I don't think it would last.
Well, another thing is a chassis, when it comes down, we've changed, the industry has changed. We're going more to the impacts and the freestyle and the wrecks, the trucks, have to go through so much brutal impacts. A faster truck will be a truck that's a little more flexible to make the suspension work better. But the problem is you wouldn't get a year out of a chassis if you made the thing different from what we're doing now.
All
right, scratch that off the Christmas list.
Going back to talking about chassis 13, we have one from Josh Kirshner asking, when you are in Atlanta, do you stop to see your chassis 13?
What was that? I'm sorry.
They were asking when you're in Atlanta, do you stop to see your 13th chassis?
No, I said goodbye to it. I took it when I built the truck to replace it. I took it. It was actually at a place called Fun Spot in Orlando, and that's where I took it. They moved it up there a year or two ago to another one of their parks up by Atlanta. There's a gentleman that takes pictures of it an awful lot, and he posts them. So I kind of visited through social media, and the sun has not been great on the fiberglass in that 12 years that it's been out in the sun. It's looking a little leathery.
We have one from Gilbert Tobola. Sorry for pronouncing your last name wrong. And his question is, Mr. Dan Patrick, I'm a big fan of yours, and congratulations on your 2013 Monster Truck Museum Hall of Fame. I'm trying to find the follow-up he had with that. If I can find it, I'll go through these comments. There it is. Sorry about that. And what year did you race against the Boogie Van? I believe it was.
Well, that was Pam Vodders, and so let's see. Pam did the Penda Series. So Penda Series for me was 94, 5, 6. So and I don't know how much longer Pam actually drove, maybe a couple years after that. So I would run across Pam probably, in a 5-year span quite a bit.
Right. Okay, let's use the next one after that. Oh, here's one from Jason Twite, and his question is, how many times have you thought to yourself, I can do better while watching Rick drive? And a follow-up question along with that is, when are you going to drive again?
Well, I'm not even remotely going to answer the first part.
Come on.
No, Rick does a good job. And, the thing is, here's the thing. And this was also when Allison drove. When we started, and Tom Mintz and I had this conversation a few years back. Today you expect a young driver to go out there and do the things in a month that it took us 20 years to cultivate. And like Tom said, he didn't drive over a car van stack until he probably drove for 7 years. And he was always considered, on the edge monster truck driver. And so, it's easy to stand back and critique somebody else and say, well, I would have done that, or I would have done this. But, the thing is, Rick does me a really good job. He's very proud of the equipment that he has. He takes very good care of it. And he knows that, we pay our bills with this, and that, I never hold him back. He can do whatever he wants. If he brings it home in a box, might not be super happy about it, but if he tells me he won, then I'll get over it. But anyway, Jason's kind of ragging me on this because I know Jason quite well. That the thing is like I say, you can always think you can do better, but when you're in the seat, there's times. Here's the difference between a 20-year-old monster truck driver and a 60-year-old monster truck driver. 20-year-old monster truck driver is going to look at that big obstacle and go, this is going to be so cool when I launch off of this. 60-year-old is going like, this is going to hurt so much when I hit that thing that I don't think I want to do that. And a 6-year-old monster truck driver understands how gravity works. Okay. The 20-year-old doesn't yet.
A 20-year-old don't mind staying up all night to work on it. The 60-year-old just wants to go to bed when the show's over.
Yeah, we're looking for a damn good diner that's open 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
Taking it back old school with this question from Christopher Allen. His question is, between your Warlord and Red Baron funny cars, which one was your favorite?
Holy cow.
Oh, wow. They're both favorite in different ways. The Red Baron was kind of my, which became the Coors funny car, and then the Coors Extra Gold one, then the Keystone. But the Warlord one was the first one. And, that's when we got our very first toy deal with Play School. So that's very, very important. And the Red Baron, I didn't like that name, but Bob George, which was the promoter of United Hot Rod. So you have to understand, I'll tell you this little tidbit. Back in the days when we were traveling, polling and stuff, we would watch the ad, listen to the radio on our way to the stadiums and arenas. We hear all of these people that were supposed to be at the event. We never heard any of their names. Bob was just an old promoter. He just made up the names. So as new vehicles come in, Bob would want you to call him what he's been telling everybody for 2 or 3 years was coming. And so he kept advertising Red Baron all the time. And he said, well, I want you to call Red Baron. And then, but a year later, it became the Coors Mongoose deal because we worked a deal with Tom McEwen. So, but they're both special, very special. I still have the Red Baron chassis, which is the Coors car. I still have that. And we're getting ready to restore it back to what it was. The Warlord car ended up in Canada somewhere and got cut up and parted out.
Darn.
So sad.
Another interesting one from Chris, actually talking about old things back then in the late 90s, is what was it like running in the old USHRA jump off?
Well, painful would be one, because we did it we did them in the stadiums, and you didn't have much room. When we did Pontiac Silverdome, I don't remember if we had a roller, and I don't know why we had a roller, but then we had a pretty steep jump. It was not real long, but it was very, very aggressive. We did the best 2 out of 3. And then, and Pontiac Silverdome, you couldn't open the doors up because it was an air dome. So, but they left the inside door up. And I know 2 out of my 3 jumps, I had to slam on the brakes. And I slid right up to the airlock door. And, but the third jump, because they told us they didn't want us to go outside, but the third jump, I broke a rear end housing in the front. And I drove up the door and I asked Bob Dwyer to go out. He shook his head no, and I pointed down to the rear end housing. He saw the oil run out of it, so he let me go ahead and do it. I think I got second. I think Fred Schaefer won there, and I got second. But I always liked Big Air because the cantilever truck was really fun with that. I liked it more outside because you could make bigger runs. The problem with indoors is the ramps were so steep and you couldn't get a lot of speed up. So your hang time was a little more, but you dropped harder.
Right.
And that was back before we had the suspensions. It's back before we had we had the suspension seats, but before we had the energy absorbing foam seats.
Wow. Going on to hopefully our last old 90s questions for a little bit here. We have one from Christian Bialek, and his question is overall opinion on the Penda series in the late 90s. Love watching those old videos on YouTube.
Quit calling him old. He's not old. Jeez.
I'm the new middle-aged. We raced 5 weekends. It was grueling, and there was a lot of arguing and people bitching and complaining about stuff. But at the end of the week, you couldn't wait to come back for the next one. You would go home and, it was 13 races, in those 5 weekends. Canfield was brutal because it was 4, and Springfield, Missouri was brutal because they were 4. I know when I first did it and Gene Patterson was with me in Canfield, I told him after the second show, you're going to have to drive. I can't take this punishment because it was really brutal. Maybe it didn't look like it now, but it was at that time it was. It was very competitive. You had to qualify. I miss it dearly. The Penda thing was great in its time. I think when the MLMT thing come along and Rich Schaefer built some phenomenal courses, those were fun. Charlotte and Las Vegas, the over-under stuff. But back to the Penda things, it was so competitive that, there was a lot of, like I say, there was a lot of arguing and complaining and stuff because we didn't have electronic timing. We had a camera at the end, so there's always questions of that. But I think for the most part, if people complain about it, they came back the next event, so I don't think it was that big a deal. But like I say, we spent the whole year looking forward to those 5 events.
Well, just to follow up on that a little bit, how much cooler was it? How much more pressure was it? Because like you said, back then you actually had to qualify to make the event. You didn't just automatically get in. So how much? I mean, that's a lot different than the way things are now.
Well, it was a learning curve. Andy and Gene were very helpful. And of course, Gene was with me when I started, and he had done some. Andy was still driving for foot at the time when I got into it. When you never let off the throttle, if you didn't, and that's where the cantilever thing really worked because the back tires never come off the ground. They did for a split second, but when that thing would land off that first set, you would black out for about a second or two because it threw you in the seat so hard, and it took you a while to get kind of adjusted. So you kind of went back to my old funny car Poland days where you drove with the front end up and you didn't see where you're going. So when you wheelied, you didn't see. had to know that that thing was going to drop down about the time that you hit the second ramp. You know, we were shelling out axles right off the bat, and a lot of them didn't know that we actually had custom made axles made. We took the steering axles out of the housings, and we went from a 26-inch axle to a 45-inch axle, and we never, ever broke any axles after we did that. People say, well, how come you're not turning very short? And, well, I couldn't turn it because the axles went all the way through the rear ends. And so if they turned, that was a special kind of metal. But anyway, I even used them through Pro MT and stuff. And they were even twisted some. They were probably twisted a spline or so. And I still have them in the shop. You know, maybe someday we'll use them again. Maybe not. If not, they'll be tent stakes.
Yeah, can I put those in Bounty?
Yeah,
we're kind
of.
You guys kind of hard on that. Just a thought. Think about it.
Well, you know, anything's possible.
Got one here from Tim Vente, actually. His question is, where do you see our industry headed now since we had this abrupt halt? I see it taming down to build back up as far as tracks are concerned.
You know, I had a lot of time here. You know, I'm very optimistic about, you know, we have everybody still employed here. We have, you know, 7 people here. And, you know, we're, like I say, we've got caught up. We're doing this. It is going to be different. You know, in what capacity, I don't know. It's kind of like, and I use this analogy, it's like a football field that you're getting ready to kick a field goal, but they took the damn goalpost and they keep moving them farther and farther away. And the thing is, you can't plan for anything because there's so much uncertainty. It is going to, like I say, it is going to be different, and it just depends. And what's sad is, you know, arenas and stadiums and mass gatherings and stuff. That's going to be at the end. You know, hopefully it's sooner than later. But you know, we're kind of planning for later here. You know, if we weren't optimistic, we sure to hell wouldn't be building 2 new trucks. So anyway, you know, back to the track's going to tame down. I don't know. You know, and I always say this, you know, as far as Feld Entertainment, you know, they created the monster. Now they have to feed it. And so it depends on, if the fan base comes back and what they're going to expect. They're not going to be happy if it's tamed down a lot. But again, like the goalpost, nobody knows what the criteria is. And there's no magic ball here or crystal ball, or, you know, I wish there was. It would make me sleep a little better. But, you know, that's a very hard question to answer because there's just so much uncertainty.
Well, now you keep saying you're building 2 trucks, and the last time I checked, you only had 1 driver. So what's the plan here with 2 trucks? What we're going to a 2-truck team? Is Cameron getting ready to come drive the second one? What are we doing, James?
Well, we got to have the cart before they get the horse. So I don't know. You know, if I could have a plastic surgeon make me look 40 years younger and 150 pounds lighter, it'd be me. But that guy's not out there. So I don't know. Might be you, Cameron. I don't know.
Yes. All right. No way. You got a dog that can ride.
What's that?
I got a dog that can ride on the hood. Tell me left and right.
Well, you know, the thing is, we're replacing the one we have. You know, that old girl's 10 years old and still looks like new. You know, Rick won the points thing over in England when he was running the Hot Wheels thing. So I mean, it's still a runner. Again, you know, it's kind of like we want to get a new chassis out there and a new truck out there to show our latest and greatest stuff. And so we decided when we were replacing that one, since things have slowed down here a little bit, we're going to go ahead and just duplicate that. And we're going to replace that. But, Allison may drive in the future again. We have some other people in mind. But again, it just depends on, what's going to be available when this thing goes back up.
Right. That is the $1 million question at this point.
I just have a transporter only holds one truck. So, I mean, I'm not really excited about buying another transporter since this one's only a couple years old. And but we did like the Europe thing, and we were planning on going back next year. We really enjoyed that. And I like new challenges and getting out and doing different things. One thing, you get kind of stale when you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. To keep it fresh, you're kind of looking for new things, and we did that, and Rick did well with it and had a good time, and did 19 shows, and our parts breakage, I think, was $600. So we were pretty happy about that.
Now I see why Rick gets a new truck. He'll spend money and get new stuff.
Yeah, you can't leave all your money on the track. I mean, you can, and
seen it done.
Looking at this one question talking about duplication as well, one from Frank Patelli, and his question is, any plans on building or cloning Samson 1 or 2?
Well, I still have 2. It's down next door to the park. We have a little place called the Park, and it's down in the shed, and I've given it away 3 times and bought it back 3 times. My wife told me to quit giving it away because we can't afford to buy it back. But so I have, which would be my original truck, which was Don's second truck, and it's pretty much intact. When Race Rock sold it, a gentleman in Florida bought it, and it kind of went through the mud circuit down there and got stripped all out. So it came back to us just bare bones, just the chassis, and so I'm looking for a body for it now. I'm looking for somebody that makes it in 88, fiberglass body of that era. And then, with this shutdown and everything, we may work on it then too. It's not really that hard to get it back up what it was. Everything is pretty much there. It's just, before we've had everything but time to do it.
Okay. We have one from Cody Saucier, which isn't much of a question, but I wanted to make sure it got out there. He just wanted to say thanks to you, Dan, and your family for your commitment to the industry and keeping us safe with awesome equipment, and that continuing to develop. The best in the business, and that's a fact.
Well, Cody's one of my special boys, so I appreciate that. And we would love to, if the right circumstances was there, we would love to have him pilot one of our trucks if you may be down the road and stuff. But we'll see. The thing is, there's a lot of young talent out there that I'm just so in awe with. Cody's one of them, and there's several others that I would put in a truck in a heartbeat because of their amazing talents. And again, we don't know where the goalposts are, and we'll have to see when they put them up, what we can do.
Well, and the neat thing about when you talk about guys like Cody is there's a lot of talent out there, but there's only a few that have the talent, personality, the respect, and the knowledge, what we call the total package. Definitely Cody Saucier is that.
Well, that's for sure. The thing is, it's I've been very fortunate with Rick, and he knows how what we've taken over the years to build what we got. We're proud of what we got, and we'll give him any tool he needs to go out there and do a good job and win. And he's doing that. You have to get comfortable. You just can't go out there and just throw the truck at it and just say, okay, well, let's just hope for the best. The the difference is there's some freestylers out there that just hit stuff and just hope for the best, and there's others that actually think it through. May not always work out, but you don't know, but at least think it through to think, okay, if I do it this way, it should do this. And is knowing, another thing is knowing how hard you can push your equipment till it's just out of control. And there's just guys like Cody and others that know how to do that. And so you can do a really good job and put on a really good show. It's one thing to go out there and try to outdo the other guy by kind of planning it versus just, hitting it. But, also I mean, all of those guys that will take that risk, they'll take more risk than others will. And then they're rewarded by, better freestyles and then, put on a better show, but they're willing to take that uncalculated risk.
What else you got there, Mason?
As I'm pulling up the last question here, actually from a Daniel Cheech Agosh, his question is, what made you switch from a Hemi then to a big block Chevy?
It's a Hemi there, Mason.
I know. As it came out my mouth, I'm like, I messed that one up. I had to steer into it.
Well, I ran Chevrolets when I first started pulling. And then we were blowing them up. That was before the good stuff came out with the World Blocks and the better stuff. We were just running the Chevrolet stuff. And when we started going to bigger superchargers, going from the 6s, then the 8s, then the 10s, and then the 14s, there's no way an Iron Chevy would handle a 14. We did go as high as 1071s, about 30% overdrive, and we would blow the cylinder walls out of them. So when we did the McEwen thing with Coors, he raced Hemis, and so that was our first Hemis, was through him. So we had those were Keith Black aluminum motors with 1471s on them, but we were only running about 30% overdrive. But when I quit pulling, we were running the Keith Black blocks with Vini billet heads and a 1471 at 72% overdrive. So we were shoving about 60 pounds of boost in it. And I like telling this story. I was having problems with the bearings were kind of chipping out, and I sent one to him, and he says, how hard are you turning the motor? And I said, I don't know, about 75, 7,700. He goes, oh my Lord, boy, you're lugging the hell out of it. Turn it up there to 9,500 and let it go. And so that's what I did. And we had no more problems after that. And actually, when I was running the Penda series that first year, I didn't have time to get a motor together. So we took the motor out of my puller, and we took the 871 off of it, or took the 1471 off it, put the 871 on it. It didn't change the fuel system. We started up, that thing looked like a water pump. It was just blowing fuel out the pipes all over the place. Anyway, but we got her kind of down in, So anyway, the Hemis, I know we've just always stayed with them. Then about 4 years ago, we went from the Keith Blacks over to the Brad Anderson blocks, billet blocks, and same as what Hall Brothers run. But we stayed with the Hemi head, or the billet heads, the Ken Vini heads. They are more expensive to do up front, but the longevity of them is, I still have two blocks here. One is an 84 and the other one's a 95, and they're still in service. So you don't find too many Chevrolets to do that.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
All right. Coming up on our last two questions here. Again, we have one from Dawn Cretan, and she's questioning you. Hey, Dan, has the monster truck industry ever frustrate you? And don't lie.
She knows that answer because we've chatted about that. Yes. I mean, it's like anything else. Is it where I want it to be? No. Is it where I wanted to be when I started? No. But it's evolved and it's changed. Is it changed for the better? Is to be seen. But, I love the people. I love what I do. I just turned 65. So I'm well, no, I'm past the new middle aged, but I'm still excited every day to still do it. It's a business, so yes, it is frustrating. There's times that I kind of go home thinking of what the hell am I doing, but I've done other things, and you have that same thing. So, to answer Don's question, yeah, it's frustrating, but the rewards way outweigh the frustrations.
I figured she was going to ask to make sure Jim hadn't been ordering parts.
Well, he does have a big list, and he doesn't know about it yet, but there is a big list for him. And as soon as he gives me a credit card for a $5 part, I'm going to max that puppy out.
That's not security for me. I got shit to put on a truck.
Well, the thing is, it's like I'm going to sell him stuff that he really needs, because I got on him. Jimmy's, and I go a long way, and he and I have been upside down. We both have quick fuses and stuff. But he called me at midnight, and he did a show in Ford Field, and he did a backflip, and it failed miserably.
Oh yeah.
And he called me, and he wanted the front end up and needed to come down for us to give a little bit of care, put it in the ER here, and then. And I said, why in the hell did you do that? And his response was, the show needed it.
No needed it.
Okay. Well, I can't compete with that. So, and then he did it the same thing in Jacksonville, I think the next weekend. And I said, did the show need it? He says, yes, it did. And so I like that. And when somebody tells me, or I do something and something happens, somebody says, well, we just needed to do that.
Yeah, I remember putting the front end in that truck while you guys were cutting on the front end above me. That was a good time there.
Yeah.
All right.
So pull into our last question here from Tim Mente. Question is, who do you personally think is the most underrated driver out there?
Oh, wow. I'm not at the big shows like I used to be and stuff, so that's really hard to say. I always thought that Gary Porter was always the most underrated driver. I didn't ever thought that he got the accolades like some of the others did. Gary, to me, was my all-time favorite. And I traveled a lot with Gary. We did a lot of stadiums back in the day and fairs and stuff, but Gary knew how far to push something to win. He didn't, even when he was driving Gravedigger, he just pushed hard enough to do better, but not hard enough to just wad everything up. So I suppose old school drivers would be him. The new guys, I really don't know how to answer that, Tim, because there's a lot of young talent out there that I'm not seeing on a regular basis. So I'm going to, so I don't insult somebody, I'm just not going to say. Well,
Dan, sir, this has been an honor. I appreciate you being on here. You're one of my favorite people to talk to, and I don't get to do it near enough. But we really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your stories and stuff. But we always ask every guest, and we just got to it, but we always ask every guest, what are like an old fun road story that you have? Whether it's just a funny breakdown or something happened at the shows. Do you have just one good funny one that comes to mind?
Oh gosh, there's so many, so many all-nighters with other teams. Gary Porter's one, Montreal, coming from Montreal and stuff. But, I really don't know. One of my favorite stories, and it wasn't actually with me, it was somebody I was traveling with. And I probably shouldn't say this, but back in the 80s, when we were first traveling, we would travel all night by ourselves. We would leave Philadelphia or New York City and drive all the way home. And we would take these we called them road rockets, was little caffeine pills. And they were good for a couple sweats. After a couple sweats, the caffeine and the adrenaline was kind of gone. But I was traveling with a good friend of mine, Mike Hollingsworth, in Springfield, Tennessee, and he had a guy driving, helping him. And that guy would eat a couple of those Road Rockets, and he'd drive all night. Mike would just sleep back in the sleeper. Well, we were coming home from Philadelphia, and it was about 5 a.m. And he gets on the radio and says, "We need to pull over." He said, "We got to change drivers." And I said, what's wrong?" And he goes, "Well, I can't remember the guy's name, but he says that he just yelled back in the sleeper, and he just saw Santa Claus and his reindeer going across the road and to swerve and miss him. And he decided it was time for us to pull over and switch drivers." And so anyway, but we used to do that stuff, and after that I kind of quit. I just thought that was a bad thing. But truck drivers did that a lot then. We would take those caffeine pills.
Right. Well, we want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, it has honestly been a privilege, and so happy when you said yes, you'd be willing to do it. And hopefully we can have you on again sometime, because we've only pretty much scratched the surface of you. But I know you're old and need to get to bed. I don't want to keep you up any later than I have to.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is for me to get up to crack of noon, I got to get to bed pretty early. So, but I appreciate it, guys. It was an honor for me to do this, and I had really fun, and the questions were all good, and I forgot about some of these things that's happened over the years and things. So it's a good reminder, and I wish everybody well.
Well, everybody be safe, and best of luck to PEI and the Sampson team, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon.
Okay, take care.
All right, Mr. Mason. Well, thanks everybody for watching once again. Good job tonight, Mason.
Of course, yeah. Good interview overall. Enjoyed all the questions. To try to answer as many of them, and I think we actually were able to cover all of them, which was really awesome. While we still have a minute here, I'd like to thank our sponsors currently, Spur Hot Sauce. The Florida Sauce Slingers own Spur Hot Sauce is a local-based business where the Southwest meets the Southeast in a clang of hot and tangy flavors. And Monster Truckinator TV, the place to go on Facebook for all things new and old Monster Truck related.
You're getting better. You're starting to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Almost there, but not just there yet. I didn't have like a cool soundtrack in the background as actually like get all the lines.
We need to get you like a 70s porn song playing in the background.
Well, I definitely don't have the hair or the mustache to get it going, but
we'll get you the Tony Oaks mustache, which, you know what, that's something we need to do. By the next episode, I'm going to do Mustache Watch 2020 Tony Oaks. We need to check back in and see if she's made him shave it or not. So we need to get back on that. But anyway,
actually, I was looking on his Facebook just on a little offset here. He actually did shave it off like the day after we did the episode with him.
Oh, damn. And here I thought we were going to have something we could follow for like a couple weeks. Christ, did he make it a week? Bus. Anyway, all right. Once again, thanks everybody for watching. Wednesday night, back to normal time. Or actually, no, we changed our times. We are going to go to 8 p.m. Central for our Wednesday night episodes. We've decided everybody slowly getting back to work, so we decided to push an hour on Wednesday night. So the Hump Day Happy Hour will be at 8 p.m. Central, and we will have this week from the Throttle Monsters team and driver of Vendetta, Mike Christensen. So everybody make sure you come up with some question, because he will have some kind of smart-ass answer for pretty much everybody. So thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you check us out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. All of our Mason, you said all of our episodes, everything you can see on YouTube now.
Exactly. Yep. And this one's going up shortly after this.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. Once again, thanks to Dan Patrick. That was an honor for me. I just got to sit and have a conversation with Dan Patrick again. So we will see you guys Wednesday. Thanks.
Yep. Peace.
You're a young man, hard man, shouting in the street, gonna take on the world someday. You got blood on your face, your big